folks, Jeff Snope with the Grizz Precision Shooting Team and the Carbon Arms Shooting Team. I've had a lot of questions on what I do to load and prep rifle brass for 3-gun matches, so I thought I would touch on that today and we'd go through the process. Alright, so what we have here is my tumbler setup and my brass dryer on old Reload Island. And what I'll do is I'll pick up 223 range brass, put it in this wet tumbler. This has tiny little stainless steel pins for media. We'll put in about a shot glass full of Dawn dishwashing soap and a 1/4 teaspoon of Lemmy Shine. More Lemmy Shine is not good. Stick to a 1/4 teaspoon, otherwise you'll get spotting and tarnish the brass. We'll put about 400 to 500 brass in this, which is filling it over what they recommend filling it to, but it does it, it works great, and you get a lot of brass done in one tumbling. We'll run this guy for about 2 hours, and then drain out the tumbler, sort out the brass, wash it off with the hose, and then put it in the dehydrator setup. Run this about usually an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours depending on how much brass you have, and that'll dry everything out on it. Next step after that is I'll typically go and sort out head stamps for just shooting long range targets or loading precision rifle. Like my 77 grin loads that I shoot major 3-gun matches with and practical rifle matches with, I'll sort out Lake City and Federal head stamps, and then usually weigh them and get them all within about 1 grain of each other weight wise and load from there. Next we'll check out the process for trimming and sizing the brass. Alright, so after the brass has been dried and cleaned the first time, and yes, we're going to clean it and tumble it twice, what we'll do is put it in a box. I'll line them all up so the necks are showing and get them all placed neatly in the bottom. Typically when I'm doing a huge process batch, I'll probably do about 400 or so at a time in this box and go through and process about 2,000 brass. We use the old Hornady one-shot case lube, and what we're going to do is spray the necks down and then kind of jumble the box around and spray the case bodies down. And then let this sit a minute and kind of aerate and get all the extra fluid off. Okay, so next what we do is we set up the press to deprime, cut the length, chamfer the neck inside and outside, and then take flashing off the neck. Station 1's got a Dillon sizer die in it that's adjusted so that cases just barely clear the top of the case gauge. Station 2 here is set up with the Dillon 1200B trimmer on a shop vac. That cuts the case to length, chamfers the inside and the outside of the neck. Size-wise, this is set up inside so that the round would basically fit right into the bottom of the case gauge. I found with the variances that you get in the brass, if you set up the sizer so that it always gets into the bottom of the gauge, typically even if you've got something that is a little bit more of a problem to size, it's going to get you underneath the top of the gauge. And then Station 3 basically takes the flashing off the inside and the outside of the neck, and that's adjusted with a Dillon size die again so that your cases are going to barely just clear the top of the case gauge if you weren't to run them through the 1200B trimmer. I'll typically wear a pair of Ear Pro when I'm doing this. I like my Pro Ears Golds because I can listen to music and rock out to Duran Duran. Okay, next stop after doing the sizing is the swage. Typically use the Dillon 600. But Hornady is coming out with a swager that fits in these lock and load APs that I'm going to try out next, and that's by far the most miserable thing in the world is swaging. So if you can buy a Dillon 1050, do it. Or get an automated swager like the Hornady lock and load AP one. But we'll go through and swage. Typically I'll set the swager up so that when you're pushing the primers into the pocket, you get a little bit of resistance there. If you don't get any resistance, when you're shooting the gun, primers will come out of the cases in your magazine and your chamber, and it's fun to be had for all. I've even seen where the rounds ride in a box on the way to the match, like this one, and from all the jiggling in the car, the primers fall out of the primer pockets in the cases. So I typically set it up to where the swager does the swage, and then you got the handle about 5/8 or 3/4 of the way down. I find if it's set there, when you go to push the primers in on the machine, you'll get some resistance out of it, and they don't fall out. That wasn't the wrong box. Bob Saget. So there, I had the handle drop all the way down. That piece of brass, somebody has probably put it on like an RCBS trimmer, and they took all the crimp out. There won't be any tension on this when it goes through the press, and you prime it, and this will probably have a primer fall out of the case primer pocket. So this goes into the scrap bin. Okay, so after you've done the trimming and the swaging, I'll tumble the brass again in the wet tumbler. That cleans out the primer pocket, gets the primer flash hole. We'll knock off any more flashing that's left on the neck, and makes them nice and bright and shiny. When you set up your trimmer, I talked about this earlier with the case gauge, it's basically you want the top of the round to clear the top of this cutout, or the top of the gauge actually. So you got the top of the gauge here, and you should be able to take something flat like a razor blade or a machinist ruler and just slide it across the top and not feel the top of the case. Typically I'll set the rounds up so they sit at least in the bottom of the case, and if you have a case that is a little bit of a pain as far as sizing goes, you'll always still make the top of the gauge. You can see this one is actually not 100% flat with the bottom. It's just a little bit higher, but it fits well within the spec. And this is an L.E. Wilson 223 Remington case gauge. No need to case gauge all your cases after sizing them. Just basically make sure when you set up your sizer that you use this thing and get the gauge adjusted down. A lot of people follow the directions that come with the dies, and if you do that, you still might not have rounds that will chamber in the gun. You've got to case gauge them and check the sizing of the shoulder. Alright, so you sized, trimmed, and swaged, then washed the cases again. Now you're ready to load. I've got the press set up with a Remington 7.5 primer. We're going to load my 55 grain light recoil gamer loads today. So we've got 23.2 grains of ramshot tack dropping out of the powder measure. These Hornady powder measures are awesome for drop accuracy. This thing will throw 5 out of 5 throws at 23.2 grains every single time. Last but not least, we've got the Redding cedar die. This is set up with a little bullet stabilizer on the bottom. Keeps it nice and straight until it goes up inside the die body to see the depth on it. And this has also got a micrometer on the top that you can zero at your OAL. when you load your 77 grain bullets, you can dial it up to 77 and then load your bullets, go back to a 0 setting on the dial here for your 55 grains again. So it comes in pretty handy. I like to get a light in the station after the powder charge to verify the powder charge, and then this station here is going to be the Dillon crimp die. I like the Dillon crimp die better than the Lee factory crimp die. It seems like the crimp is more uniform, and I seem to get better accuracy out of it. And I'll use the same crimp die setup for 55 grain and 77 grain loads. What we typically look at for setting the crimp is we'll take the dial calipers, or the dial caliper setup, and check the neck here. I'll measure the neck and then adjust the crimp die down so that I get about a 2 thousandths difference when I check it again. You can see that there's just a really light, shiny spot on the neck there where it's been crimped. And when you pull these bullets out, there's usually a very, very faint little line in the bullet. I like to get it set up just so the bullets don't work their way out of the case when they're riding around in the car, in the mags, or when the bolt slams home on the rifle. Sometimes that can be an issue if you don't have your neck tension set up right. These typically seat right into the top of the cantilever on the 55 grain bullets, and we'll go over OAL in a minute. I'll give you guys a bunch of the load information for that stuff. So to verify your overall length, I'll use a set of dial calipers. We've got these guys set up, and what we have here is about a 2.2065 measurement. And then I like to also verify off the ogive as well, which we're at 1.8565 on the ogive. This is a handy little tool. Typically, when the manufacturers make bullets, you'll see the bullet change shape out towards the end, and you might get a different overall length measurement as you switch batches. Typically the ogive is measured a little bit further down, so it's a little bit more accurate reading between batches, and it's almost always the same. So if you verify your ogive setting and check it when you switch batches, you can fine-tune your overall length and keep your loads the same. Okay, so you got your loaded round and your case gauge. You put the round in the gauge and run the flat edge over the top. You shouldn't grab on anything, and when you check it to the side in the cutout, you're going to have a little bit of tilt back and forth. And that indicates that you're below the top of the gauge and above the bottom, and that is a perfect loaded round. I use Grizzly Targets brass. They sell it in bulk. It's amazing quality. It's inexpensive, and if I cannot pick up some range brass or get something off the ground, I will get the Grizzly brass. They also do Lake City brass, so I use that a lot of times for my precision 223 loads, the 77 grains. And then the method I do for load development, that is bangsteel.com, Dan Newberry. It's called the OCW load method, or load development method. That was referred to me by Craig Outson, really good 3-gun shooter that is on Team Rainier Arms and Rainier Ballistics shooting team. Okay, so here is your load info for that 55 grain Hornady FMJ. We've got case length, powder charge, primer, OAL average, and ogive average. And then on the 77 grain, we're looking at same length cases, Same primer. Powder charge is 23.4 grains of tack. And those are your average ogive and overall length measurements there. And that's a 77 grain Sierra SMK, part number 9377 for, I think that's the 50 round box. No, it's a 500 round. And then a 9377T for the 50 round box. Couple tips when you buy bullets. Buy them in bulk at the beginning of the season. Shoot the same lot number the entire season. Do the same thing with powder and primers. You won't ever have to change anything. There won't ever be any question of accuracy. You'll know that if you're not doing well, it's you. So one last thing, guys. When I'm loading for 77 grain, if a case hits the ground and dents the neck, I use that for a 55 grain gamer load. Will not use that in a precision rifle match, a practical rifle match, or long range and 3-gun. Just keep that in mind if you find some case necks that have issues. This concludes loading up for AR-15 on 3-gun. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment. You can hit me up on my Facebook page. And hope you guys have a great rest of the season and happy shooting.